What's up Raiders, Bionic here. Welcome to today's Raid Shadow Legends video where we need to once again talk a little bit about the ongoing events and what I believe to be bait. Yep, I am going to call it. I think there are trying to ensure that we empty our resources with this Dungeon Divers event, which now has also a champion training event at the same time. So I did a video about 2 days ago saying how this was really hard to achieve for somebody who does not necessarily pay to play or pay to win, call it however you want. Just by using all my energy throughout all of these 6 days, I would have been probably able to get to roughly 4,000, maybe the epic skill tome, but then I would have had to spend to get that legendary skill tome, which would have been somewhat on par with the value of a legendary skill tome. Okay, good enough, I could have done it, but now that we have the champion training event, you're forced to decide between doing dungeons or doing the champion training event. And then they also make these very nice rewards here at the end, so you're going to obviously want to push for that as well. Well, if you are farming the campaign instead of level 20 dungeons, then you are getting a reduced rate of the amount of points for your Dungeon Divers event. So you basically cannot complete both, okay? Another indication that I think they're still trying to ensure that we empty our resources for an upcoming fusion is that we're going to have a summon rush as well. We know that Raid 2.0 was just launched today. We know that we should have some news regarding that, most probably a fusion within the next couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Let's, for example, take the Torment fusion, which was in last December. This was the biggest break that we had. There was almost 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6, before we had the Rhodos fusion, right? And then shortly after, we had the Killian the Lucky, which was about, what, 2 weeks after. Then we had Skull Lord Vargal, not even like a week-ish after the Killian the Lucky. And then we had a week break for Gerptuk Mossbeard, and now we're going on about 2-3 weeks, okay? So if anything, the next fusion should be in the next 2 weeks. If you look at these events, they're going to end sometime next week, sort of when we're going to have Raid 2.0. So I'm thinking they're going to time this, all right? But no, today I want to show you guys some more evidence that Plarium is getting greedier. And as I said, I think this is, again, a strategy to ensure that we are out of resources for the next fusion event so that you are once again forced to pay some more. So here we go. Starting with the evolution of champion training events since last year. Okay, so pay attention. We are in March. We then are in May, and then we have June, and down here we have August, okay? So these were some of the first ones that I have ever seen. For 3,000 points, you could have gotten an epic skill tome. Also pay attention to these points right here, okay? So it used to be 500 points for ranking up a 6-star. Used to get a little bit less points for the leveling, but then move on to the next one. It doubles in points, but you can now get a legendary skill tome, and you have a little bit more resources to get there. If I'm not mistaken, these were also a little bit longer. Still doable, because I remember, or I do have some screenshots of me completing these, okay? So as a 100% free-to-play player, it was doable. But then look at these ones right here, and that was the June. The points have been reduced here, but they've been increased a little bit for the leveling, and now it's still 6,000 points, but you have less rewards, okay? Move on to then the August one, and they go up a little bit more in terms of points for what you need to complete them. You do have some legendary pieces here. Maybe they're just trying to make it so that they're varied a little bit, but that's the whole point. You need to pick your battles, okay? And when I see back-to-back events like we have right now, I'm a little bit concerned because I know what's upcoming, and I think what they're trying to do. Let's move on to the next 4. Which is also from last year. Here we have the end of August. For 6,000 points, you now have only an epic skill tome, okay? Maybe this was part of a fusion because we have a Stitch Beast. I don't fully remember. But then it got back to the 6,000 points for a legendary skill tome, but we don't have any more legendary pieces. So if anything, maybe they're just switching them up a little bit, but for 6,000 points, you're getting at least a legendary skill tome. Move on to a little bit further in the year. We're now in November. We have, once again, a legendary skill tome and a void shard for about 6,000 points, which seems to be somewhat the new norm, right? And then the last one that I have here, December, no, it jumps to 8,000 points. We can get an epic skill tome, but for 6,000, which is what it used to be before. So if anything, they just added an extra sort of reward at the end, an extra 2,000 points. If I'm not mistaken, though, there's sort of always the same amount of time, which is typically 4 or 5 days or something like that, maybe 6 days. The longer ones for the fusion events are typically like almost 10 days, but those are like 20,000 points. I'll show you guys after. But here's where it gets interesting. Now this year, we have February, we have March, we have April, and then we have June, okay? So now for 12,000 points, you're getting 4 ancient shards, as well as 2 epic skill tomes back to back, but at 8,000 points. So where's that 6,000 points reward, which is roughly here? It's now only like, what, 300k silver. Interesting. All right. Then let's keep going. Then we seem to have one of the regular ones. We're back down to 5,500 points for an epic skill tome, which is somewhat doable in between sort of like these fusion events. But move on a little bit further, and now we have for 9,000 points a void shard, an epic skill tome for 7,800 points, and for 6,000 points only 1 ancient shard. It gets worse. Look at the one from today. Now we need 22,000 points to get 1 legendary skill tome. Yes, there's a sacred shard in there, so man, this must be worth it. Let's push to try and complete this. For 13,000 points, you now have 1 epic skill tome. So guys, if that's not evidence enough for you, I think, like I said, Plarium is getting greedier and greedier because I think they're tailoring more and more and more to the wells of this game, okay? So even if I were able to complete this in this amount of time, before, let's say, the next fusion event, I still do not believe that it is worth it, okay? Because these rewards used to be a lot cheaper. Now let's look at quickly the events from the fusions, which we have Foley, Harvest Jack, Torment, and Rotos, okay? So look at the previous one from Foley last year. 20,000 points, 17,000 you could have, or 18,000, sorry, you could have gotten legendary skill tomes, 3 layer of rewards, some chickens, some legendary items, 6-star, pretty good overall. Then move on a little bit to the one from Harvest Jack, 25,000 points for a legendary skill tome, a couple more of legendary items, an epic tome for 10,000. I get it, these take more time, or you have more time to complete them. But then we start hitting the Torment fusion, 33,000 points for only the epic that you need to do the fusion. Only 2 layers of rewards, 1 epic tome for 20,000 points. And then let's look at the one from Rotos. Now 30,000 points. You cannot get the epic in this one. So very similar to the previous one. So yet again, another example that these are getting harder and harder and harder to complete. So finally, here's the recap for you guys, okay? So we have last year in March, this was the first one that I showed, 3,000 points for an epic skill tome. Then it moves to 6,000 points for a legendary skill tome. Also last year, this one was in May. And then let's compare to this year, literally 1 year later. This is what our current one looks like, okay? 22,000 points. 22,000 points for that legendary skill tome. And here's the latest champion training event for a fusion. This one is the Gerp Duck. 30,000 points for that legendary skill tome, 20,000 to get one of the epics that you need. So when I say choose your battles, this is what I mean. I can either do this event ongoing right now, spend all of my resources, use all my food, get some rewards, not even make it to the end, or I can wait for the one that's part of a fusion event and get some rares that might be really helpful. For instance, Soulbound Boyer here, who's a good rare to have on any account, especially with the all rares tournaments that we have ongoing. So again, guys, be careful. These are not all created equal. They are definitely trying to push more and more and more, or harder and harder events on us, okay? I think it's unfair. Again, it is becoming harder and harder for free-to-play players to compete. But by now, I think we all knew that, guys, right? Let me give you guys one more set of evidence to prove my point today, okay? Going back with the fusions, this is Sir Nicholas last year, the first fusion that I ever saw. Look at what is needed to accomplish this. 2 uncommons, 1 epic, and then the fusible rare that we can easily do with farmables, right? Even this one was all farmables champion. Then we move to Shamrock. It gets a little bit harder. We don't have uncommons, still doable. This guy is farmable. A lot of these are farmable. All right, then we move on to Foley. It's getting harder and harder and harder. They're testing the waters. Are they gonna bite for this? Are people gonna spend for this? Yes. Let's keep going. Then, all right, somewhat similar, but we need more rares than just uncommons and rares like it was with Foley. Then they released the permanent fusion. We have Rosin. All rares across the board, and then it never quits. It's all rares, all rares, all rares, all the time, and a lot of these rares are now locked behind these events that are getting progressively harder to complete. Okay, so guys, that was the point today. I really wanted to talk about this because it's getting ridiculous. Like, I want to encourage this company. Obviously, I am doing it because I'm making videos on it. But I also want to warn you guys that certain behaviors should not be encouraged. I think this is one of them, and I really want you guys to be better prepared for the next fusion, hoping that it's a really good fusion champion, okay? Because for me, on my account, the fusion champions have made a big difference. Some of my best champions are still the fusion champions, right? I use Harvest Jack, Foley, Torment, and Rotos all the time, all right? So hopefully this will shed some light as to what is going on right now. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, please let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you later.